You don't have to be afraid of that. It's okay. Because life is this big, grand, wonderful, terrifying mystery. Right? So I get that we sometimes need to shrink it down into understandable parts. But when those understandable parts dominate everything and you try to fit everything else into those parts, yes, we miss out on a ton.
When life throws a challenge at you, one thing is certain: to find a resolution for every issue, every problem, for everybody, there's more than one way. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the More Than One Way podcast. I'm Whitney Ross. With me, as always, is my good friend, Thom Rasnick.
Hey, Whitney.
Hey, Thom. How are you?
You know, I'm doing pretty good. A lot on my mind today. A lot going on in the world. Yeah. And I was thinking through it all how strong people with really strong beliefs, how those beliefs shape how we experience life. So beliefs shape how we experience life. And I've just been thinking about that over and over and over again. You ever thought about that?
Yeah, I have. That's interesting that you put it that way. I think our beliefs definitely shape that. And sometimes we know our beliefs right away. Something like brings them right to the surface.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to think about it a little bit. Sometimes we're not sure what we believe about something that just pops up out of the blue.
Right. And the ones that are right there are the ones that really seem to have a strong effect on how we experience reality, in a sense, or life anyway. You know, with the Sweet 16, the sports stuff really makes me think about that. Did you ever experience that?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. Thinking back to this past football season, University of Tennessee ended up playing in the Orange Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a big deal, and it's exciting. And their opponent was Clemson, which was exciting for me because I spent time at both schools. So it was an exciting time to kind of think about them playing each other. And my family and I watched the game together, which was exciting. And a lot of my family are Clemson fans.
Oh.
And my niece especially is a really big Clemson fan. And she was very upset that I was not cheering for Clemson and could not understand why I was not cheering for them. And so during the game, she'd kind of shoot me a look anytime anything happened. And it wasn't that I was cheering against Clemson.
Right.
I was actually cheering for both Tennessee and Clemson.
Yeah.
But that idea that I wasn't for one team and against another team, which is mind-blowing to her.
Yeah. So her whole belief around the way she saw you got shattered. Yeah. It changed. You were no longer her, hey, this is the guy I can turn to be on my side for. Right. Yeah. So if that's true for sports, and we see, like I said, we see it through not just the Sweet 16, but all of March Madness. It's even more true, or at least as true, in the kind of the spiritual religious realm that you and I talk about so much here on our More Than One Way podcast, because it just shapes how somebody's belief around God in particular will shape their experience oftentimes of everything else, their experience of life. And there's all kind of stories in scriptures about it.
Do you have one particular in mind?
Yeah, I actually do. You know, funny enough, I actually do have a story in mind. It's a story about Jesus is walking along, as he tended to do in these Bible stories, and he's walking along with his disciples, and they're walking down the road, and they come across, and how they know this, the story doesn't say, but they come across a man who was blind from birth. And I think the implication was he was begging, because options are pretty limited back in the day for what a person who was blind could do. So he's sitting by the side of the road begging, and somehow or another they know he's blind from birth. And they're walking along, and the disciples notice him. And so they say to Jesus, hey, tell me something. Who sinned? Was it him or his parents that he was born blind?
Wow.
Right? So there's the belief system right there. The belief system back in their day, and it was a strong and powerful belief system, and that was if somebody was going through something difficult, some kind of suffering, some kind of mishap, some kind of difficulty with their life, or something like being born blind, it had to be somebody's fault. Somebody had to have done something wrong, because their overarching belief was that God was just. So if God is just, meaning like fair, then there has to be a reason for this person to have such a hard life.
Right.
Right? And that reason has to be that person's fault. Okay? So right off the bat, there's that belief. Nothing wrong with having a belief like that.
Right.
But then it trickles down into, so then therefore any mishap or bad thing that happens in life has to be that person's fault. So right there, it just limits life.
Sure.
So their beliefs not only shape how we see life, sometimes beliefs limit how we see life. Right? Because here's this guy, and they got two options.
Yeah.
He sinned or his parents sinned. That's it.
And
that's the only way they're going to see it.
Yeah.
And everything else has to fit into that. Does that make sense?
It does. And the way that you're telling it, it doesn't make sense in other ways.
Yes,
I mean, it kind of seems like surely there's more than one way to look at that situation.
Surely. There's two.
A or B.
That's right. It's either A or B. It's this or that.
Couldn't be a C.
And I'd like to say, God, we've gotten past that. But I don't really think we have gotten past that.
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, I think people's beliefs still really shape the way that they see reality, and the experience that can really affect the way that they see other people in life, and can really limit. And oftentimes it ends up making them almost be like mean toward other people when that's not their intention.
They're just more looking for clarity or certainty, maybe.
Right.
It comes across as cold.
They're just saying this belief has to be true. And I'm holding on to this belief because it helps me in life, and not really thinking about what it does to somebody else.
So they're thinking, how do I fit this into my belief? That I
right.
already have?
So rather than going into life and saying, I'm having this experience, and that this experience is shaping my belief to some degree, I have the experience. I see a blind man born from birth, and it has to fit into my construct, right? So in today's day and age, I was talking with a person the other day, and she was telling me about her when she grew up, and the beliefs that her family had about God and her church had about God, and so those beliefs were then filtered down and taught to their children. And the person was telling me she was 7, 8 years old, and the beliefs about her beliefs about God that she learned were that God was really kind of punitive, pretty much always on the lookout for people doing something wrong or not believing the right thing. And if you didn't believe the right thing or did something wrong, there was the consequences were harsh, meaning like you go to hell, kind of thing. So she said she grew up, and anytime there was a really bad thunderstorm outside, one of the beliefs that was passed down to her was that somehow or another God is angry when there's one of those really heavy thunderstorms, or much less something like a tornado, or that we've seen. God's angry with those people, right? That's the belief. And so she thought, well, God must be angry at us. And so she would run into her room and get down on her knees and pray that she would go to heaven, because she just knew it's about time. This must mean that she was going to die.
Wow.
Okay. So I don't think her parents were trying to be mean. I think they were trying to set up a system or talk about their beliefs in such a way that said to him, God is really, really an important part of our life, and we want God to be an important part of your life. But this is the way that we think God is. This is our beliefs around God. And so you have to kind of toe the line. And if you don't toe the line, right? So now she, as an adult, what she said happened was she got to the point where she could choose whether or not she was going to participate in church or not. And so she stopped. And when she had children, she and her husband had children, they didn't take her to church. They went out into nature and camped and did stuff like that because she was so afraid of passing on that kind of a God to her children. That's how strong the belief was.
Yeah.
And now she says she's still not over it. And this is her term, she's still rewiring her brain to get that belief out of her head.
Yeah.
Right? So our beliefs shape the way we understand life, the way we see life. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So like these tornadoes that just happened in Mississippi, right? With that belief system, you see, God is punishing those people for something.
Yeah.
And that's the way that somebody's going to understand reality. Well, you could have a very different belief system and come up with a totally different way to see what's going on when a tornado hits a place like Mississippi.
So in the story that you were talking about earlier, how did Jesus respond to that question?
Well, that is a good question. So Jesus, he doesn't pick A or B.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So here's the cultural wisdom or the conventional wisdom of the culture of the time. The sinner is either the person or the parents. The blame goes to the person or the parents. Right?
Right.
Jesus says it's not door number 1, it's not door number 2, it's door number 3. And they never even thought that there was a door number 3. The only thing they thought of was, 1 and 2, A and B. So he says, neither he sinned nor his parents sinned. But if you pay attention, you'll see God at work in and through this guy. And the way that God is at work is, as usual in the Gospels and things like that, is through Jesus. So Jesus takes some mud, places it on the guy's eyes, and says, go to this pool, this sacred pool, and wash off. And when he goes and washes off, he can see. And so now the disciples get to have that experience.
Yeah.
And that experience shatters the door number 1, door number 2 way to see it.
Right.
So Jesus brings in a third thing that those two belief system, that belief system that comes up with 2 reasons for why that happened, could never come up with.
Right.
Right? Isn't that amazing? I think that's just so amazing because that's what people like Jesus do. They come into life and say, let's not limit our options here so quickly by saying that this is just our beliefs and this just must be the way it has to be. Let's pay more attention to the situation and see what can come from it.
Feels more hopeful for sure.
Yeah. And don't you think, Jesus, he's always doing stuff like that. And in doing that, he gives them a very different picture of God.
Right.
So, or an additional picture of God. Let's put it like that. So God isn't just, God is compassionate. God is healing. God has those attributes as well. So it's not just about justice, though justice is a big part. Right. So, and the thing is, like I said, is this just keeps playing itself out in our day and age all the time.
Yeah, it seems like a very timely story.
Yeah.
And those same emotions and feelings are definitely right on the surface.
Right. So you could see it in a small way with your niece, all right? And I hope you still like her. I mean, I hope you guys are still friends.
We're good.
All right.
We're good.
All right.
Yeah.
You got past all that?
We did.
Yeah. That can split up families.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, speaking of the family side, it can happen in families. I heard a story about a grandmother whose, once again, belief system was very much shaped by the Bible has kind of all the answers to life, right? And God has spoken to us definitively and completely and literally through the Bible. Okay, so very, very important collection of books. And so she was very devoted to reading it, went to a church that essentially said, follow everything exactly as the Bible says, do it exactly this way, and your life is going to go well. And her life has gone at least enough the way that she wants it to go.
That seems true to her.
That seems true to her. That has become her belief, right? So she's got grandchildren, and she wants to pass that on to them because they're not doing the same thing that she's doing.
Okay.
Her grandchildren's parents aren't making them read the Bible quite like that.
Gotcha.
And aren't saying all of life's answers are right here, like it's a kind of a answer book. It's not that they don't talk about stuff that the Bible brings up or talk about stories in the Bible or stuff like that. It's said that they don't do it her way.
Yeah, just a different way to look at it.
Right, different way to understand and believe about the Bible. Right, and she loves her grandchildren, and she wants to do what's best for her grandchildren. So every time she's with them, Whitney, you tell me, what do you think that she does?
Maybe pulls out the Bible.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes, she pulls out the Bible. And she pulls out the Bible, and now one of her grandchildren is a teenager, and she says things in such a way that they're almost kind of like confusing to a teenager. She essentially says, if you're not completely and utterly in the Bible, have your hands in it, you're doomed.
Goodness.
Or your life isn't going to go well. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
It's going to go bad. And so she's afraid. So the 13-year-old, this girl is afraid. And she feels like her grandmother's saying, basically, I've got to walk around school all the time with carrying my Bible and reading it in between classes because I got to be in it.
Yeah.
Right. So this belief system that has some level of comfort to a degree and gives this woman some sense of security is doing the complete opposite.
Right.
To her teenage daughter, but she can't see it.
It's something she's trying to do out of love,
right?
But is turning into something very different.
It turns into something very different. And once again, this is the picture of God. God is completely and utterly captured in the Bible. The Bible is the only way to know this God. So then, therefore, you have to do this. And if you don't do this, bad things are going to happen to you.
So it's a kind of an either or.
Yes, it's an either or, and then it's I'm totally missing sight of my granddaughter. I don't even see her really. Yeah, that's how strong these beliefs thing. And once again, that's how strong our beliefs about God can be.
It's clouding the view of the person.
It clouds the view of life, and then it clouds the view of who a person is and what a person can be. Puts everybody on this nice little neat box. Yeah. And like I said, it might feel very comforting to some degree, but it turns out being very punitive, very damaging.
So in bringing that up, it's funny, we were talking to our friend Nathan just recently about a situation just like this, and Nathan is actually with us today on the podcast. So Nathan, welcome.
Hey. Good to be here. I'm usually behind the scenes.
Yeah, we're glad to have you with us on the mic today. And wondered if you might share a little bit with us about the story you shared with us, just kind of about your own background and kind of your own beliefs and what it looked like for you.
Yeah, so I grew up going to a Methodist church when I was young. It will remain unnamed. And I remember being in Sunday school class or Bible school, and kind of being told that it's kind of us or them, heaven and hell's real, and certain people go to heaven, certain people don't. And I found that to be very limiting and would ask questions about it, like, well, okay, what about people that don't believe what we believe or what you believe? And I was told, well, they don't make it. And I felt, even as a young child, that was not acceptable to me personally, and I chose not to believe that. I was kind of asked to not come around anymore, or maybe that it was a better if I didn't come to Sunday school because of that. They didn't tell me that. They told my parents that. And I continued to go to church there for a while, but it really changed the way I looked at everything. I felt very unwelcome and unaccepted, not by the way people acted towards me, but just because my beliefs were not in alignment with them. And there was definitely an energy there that was resistant to me that I felt like, and it was very, unwelcoming. And that's ultimately led to me not going to church anymore when I became more of age and pursuing that in life and studying things on my own and seeing, what worked better for me when it came to all that.
So what was that like to be in the place where you were raised, as a child, and feel unwelcome? Not by, like you said, not by the way people responded to you, but just because of beliefs.
It was weird. It was kind of jarring a little bit, disorienting. Yeah, I felt out of place, like something was wrong with me, even though I was very comfortable and grounded in what I believed. But when you're faced with a bunch of people that don't believe what you believe, if you're kind of the odd person out, you can't help but feel a little bit like, oh, this is my fault, or this is my problem. Maybe something's wrong with me. Why don't I believe the same thing that all these other people believe? Why am I different? So that's kind of how it felt at first.
Yeah, that's hard for anybody, much less for a child to try to. And do you think it was their goal to get you to not go to church when you were an adult?
No, I think it was their goal to, because these people cared about me and other people in that community, it was their goal to push what they believed onto me to the point I would accept it because it's for my own good and they're right. And this is the way it is. And because they love me, they want me to be in the right and believe the way it is. And I'm using air quotes there. So yeah, I mean, I felt like it was done out of good intention, but it just wasn't what I believed.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that, once again, it's a very, very common theme that seems to be, this is the good intention. It comes out of a deep belief that somebody holds, and it has the opposite effect on the person, if not a extremely negative effect on the person. That's true in the story that we told with Jesus, because as the story went on in the Jesus thing, the Pharisees, the religious authorities, the people who were in that day and age considered to be closest to God, the guy was brought to them so that they could say, hey, yes, this was a legit thing that that Jesus just did for you. Because what happened was he healed the guy on the Sabbath, and you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath and all that kind of stuff, right? Once again, another belief. So here's the strong belief. Nothing wrong with the Sabbath. It's a fantastic thing. But then all these strong beliefs around it become, well, that, if you're supposed to rest, that means you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't do that, right?
Right.
So you can't even be kind to somebody on the Sabbath, right? Okay. And that's how strong these things get. And that was a dominant belief. So this guy came to the religious professionals, and they just couldn't believe it. They said, okay, so how did this happen? He told them how it happened, and they went, no, that's not how it happened. There's no possible way that could have happened, because Jesus is a sinner. He's not a good guy. If he was a good guy, he would know he was not supposed to heal on the Sabbath. So you are wrong. Your experience is wrong. And that, once again, that's how so strong belief systems can be, is the evidence is right there in front of you, but your own beliefs won't let you see it. The guy's healed. Yay. God's at work. Hooray. No. You did it in a way that's different from the way that I believe, so that's bad. And it goes, the whole story unfolds, and it just goes on and on about them trying to get this guy to say something bad about Jesus because he did it wrong, and there's no possible way that he can be of God.
So he's supposed to feel bad that he can see now
Yeah,
because it was done in a wrong way.
Because it was done wrong. Okay, I don't think you can really see. Right? Yeah, that's just it. Right, but it has the opposite effect. What happens with the guys? He gets deeper and deeper and deeper in the mystery of who and what Jesus is, and he can see, yeah, God was at work in this guy, and you guys can't see it, or won't let yourself see it. Because it interferes with how you've constructed reality, how you've constructed life. It interferes with your beliefs. And religion, it's hard because religion, for so many people, is based on just pure belief.
Which makes you wonder, if that's the case, how much do we miss?
Yes, how much do we miss?
All around us.
Yeah. I think one of the big takeaways of a story like that, or Nathan's story, or any of the other ones that we've talked about for me, is not that beliefs are bad, but just keep them in the background sometimes. Don't go into don't go into life with the idea of fitting all of life into what I already believe. Go into life open and experience life, and maybe it'll shape and change what you already believe, what I already believe. You don't have to be afraid of that. It's okay, because life is this big, grand, wonderful, terrifying mystery. Right? So I get that we sometimes need to shrink it down into understandable parts. But when those understandable parts dominate everything and you try to fit everything else into those parts, yes, we miss out on a ton.
And it definitely affects the way we treat each other.
Yes.
You know, I mean, if we're in a really limited belief or an either or situation, has to be this or that, we really affect the way that we're in community.
Affects the way that we relate to each other completely.
Yeah, it's like I have a friend who's a studio mate of mine. He's an artist, and he is 100% completely literalist when it comes to Christianity, and I am not. And we disagree on just about every single thing we talk about when it comes to that, but it's never like an argument, really. It's more like, well, that's not what I believe. Or I'm like, do you really believe that? And he's like, yeah, I do. And I'm like, well, all right. You know, and I think that comes from just experience, you know, in life, like dealing with someone who's, I think he's in his late 40s, someone who has been through life and understands how to communicate with people, might not feel the need to push his beliefs onto me.
Okay.
In the way someone was trying to mold me when I was a child, perhaps. And I'm the same way. Like, I'm more concerned about understanding someone, where they're coming from and what it is that they believe, than I am trying to get them to see things my way.
Yeah, so thank you for that. And if you magnify that and put that into like a community, you know, like a church or a community, for me, a powerful community would be one that does just what you did with your friend. Would be, okay, our beliefs aren't going to be exactly the same, but we're going to respect one another, because we realize that beliefs are fluid. They can change, they can move and grow as we move and grow. And the relationship, like you bring up, is way more important than who's right and who's wrong. And so for me, I think a really good organized religion or a good community would be one that could be that open, that could keep the beliefs that are trying to hold us together in the background behind the relationship.
And I think it's interesting because in the situation you've talked about with your friend, it's not that you've decided to hide what you think and not talk about it. You talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, and so and you talking about that community, it's a place where those beliefs are known.
Yes.
It's not that they're hidden and we all just kind of get along because we don't say what we think. It's no, we say what we think, but we still find some way to be together in that. And I think that's a challenge.
Yes, it is. It is. It's a challenge to hold those things in tension.
Yeah. So I have a friend that was sharing a tool that they use when they're in those situations where there seems to be a real difference of belief around a topic that is bubbled to the surface or is present at the moment. And the thing that they do is they really think about, why might this person have that belief? What is it that might have made that belief core and so strong for them? much like we have our own beliefs and we kind of know how that develops, thinking about that other person and thinking, why might they have that belief? Could it be coming from a place of good? Maybe they feel like that belief is actually the right solution for this situation, even though maybe I have a different belief. But really thinking beyond just the issue at hand to that person once again, and really what has brought them to where they are. And maybe even asking that, help me understand why that's your belief.
Yeah.
Sometimes just something that simple and disarming can be a better way than just, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And just immediately jumping to that. Because sometimes that's what it feels like inside when it's a belief that's so different from yours. It just pops up this flag immediately. You're like, that's wrong. That's different.
Yeah.
So kind of like you said, leaving space to be open, to be humble and kind of listen and look.
Yeah, that's once again, that's an extremely helpful way, a helpful tool to say this person is not trying to be bad. This is somebody that's speaking from a place of goodness and love. And that's a very different thing than someone who's trying to be malicious or. So we've got all these different examples, I feel like they're all flying around and we've told a bunch of different stories. Do you get what I'm saying? Do you get what this is, what we've been talking about?
It's funny. That brings to mind a Seinfeld episode. I don't know if you remember the one where Elaine and her boyfriend are having the kind of conflict over their beliefs where,
yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Where he's a believer and she is not. And
right.
So, she gets upset when she finds out that he's a believer, that he's not more concerned about her and her not having beliefs. And,
right.
His response is just kind of, well, I'm not the one going to hell, and so
wait, say that again. I'm not what?
I'm not the one going to hell.
All right.
So there's a scene where there's a newspaper outside of his neighbor's door and he asks Elaine to take it. And he's like, well, why should I take it? Like, well, because you're already going to hell. So
yeah, right.
You go ahead and take it, So they had these different set of beliefs.
Right.
And it was just this interesting play on how they dealt with those and how they worked their way through those, where
right.
they had a very certainty of their own beliefs, but it was a comical way to show two people trying to make sense of that together.
Right. And how strong they can be.
Yeah. Well, Nathan and Thom, thank you for taking the time to have this discussion, and we're glad that you've joined us as well. Thank you for listening, and we'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to reach out to us on social media or email, we're always looking for your feedback and are interested in knowing what's happening with you. What experiences are you having that we might be able to share and discuss here on the show? So thank you so much for listening, and we hope we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the More Than One Way podcast, brought to you by the Center for Spiritual Practice in Knoxville, Tennessee. We really appreciate your time and would love to hear your feedback. You can reach us by emailing hello@morethanonewaypod.com, or you can connect with us on social media using the handle @morethanonewaypod. If you found this episode helpful, we hope that you'll share it with your friends, with your family, with people you work with all the people who you know. Thank you and take care.